Hey, this is Dr. Larsen at SLC Med Spa. Today we're just doing a Learn at Lunch. I was going to talk about just our special that was going on this week about injecting plasma and some fat cells into the scalp to regenerate hair growth, which is an amazing, really great procedure. But because of a new statistic that came out on obesity this past week on the world news, I decided to change the topic and talk about a little bit about obesity. So last week, the last time we did a Learn at Lunch, I talked about hormones, and there's three things in healthcare that to me are just absolutely shocking, unbelievable, and completely unacceptable. One is the way we treat how we treat hormones, using oral synthetic hormones that cause disease and cause breast cancer. It's just so shocking to me that we continue to do that. It's such bad treatment. It's so bad for the women who have gone through menopause. There's such better options, and we talked about that the last time I did a Learn at Lunch. The other thing that is just shocking to me is the way our healthcare system is dealing with obesity and not getting to the real problem of obesity, and I'm going to talk about that today. And either next week or the following week, I'm going to talk about just how our healthcare system is not recognizing the importance of iodine in our nutrition, how iodine has been taken out of our food supply, how important it is for our children's IQ. Brains do not develop correctly without iodine, how important it is for thyroid. It's impossible to make thyroid hormone without iodine. But the really huge issue here in the United States is how iodine is completely toxic to breast cancer cells. And as iodine drops in our food supply, breast cancer keeps going up and up and up, and nobody's discussing that. Those are the three biggest things in healthcare that are just unbelievable to me. How we deal with hormones, how we're dealing with obesity, and how iodine has been taken from our food supply, and terrible, awful diseases like breast cancer keep going up. It's just shocking, those three issues in healthcare. But the reason why I want to talk about obesity this week is I was just sitting down at home watching world news, and I'm a weight loss physician. I do a lot of weight loss. I do a lot of aesthetics, but my passion is nutrition and weight loss. I've done hundreds of hours in nutrition. I've been telling people for years and years now the obesity rate is 33%. I thought it had gone up. I thought it was up to about 34, maybe 35%. And the absolutely shocking news that came out this week is the obesity rate in the United States is now 40%. This isn't overweight. This isn't just being a little bit heavy. It's actually obesity, a BMI, body mass index of over 30. Now 40% of Americans are now obese, and that our healthcare system, that our healthcare system isn't coming out and just really getting to the issue of why we're having such a problem with obesity, why obesity keeps going up, why prediabetes keeps going up, why type 2 diabetes keeps going up. It's absolutely a tragedy. It's unbelievable. It is unacceptable that the AMA and that our healthcare community is not dealing with this issue with obesity keeps going up. It really is just a tragedy. And there are a few physicians that are coming out and are starting to talk about this. And we need to be talking about this, especially with these just absolutely shocking numbers that came out this week. There is one physician there's a great article. It's in My Science Academy. The world-renowned heart surgeon speaks out on what really causes heart disease. Dr. Dwight Lundell, Lundell, wrote a great article on what really causes heart disease. It's not high cholesterol. It's not high fat. And he goes on to say in this article, he talks about inflammation and really what causes heart disease. And he comes out in his article, to quote him, he says a statement in here that is just, it's awesome. It really is an incredible statement that is just so true that everybody needs to hear and really understand how devastating this obesity crisis is. He writes in his article, he says the long established dietary recommendations, this is our long established dietary recommendations by the United States, by our healthcare system. He says the long established dietary recommendations have created an epidemic of obesity and diabetes, the consequences of which dwarfs any historical plague in terms of mortality, human suffering, and dire economic consequences. I'm going to read that one more time. Everybody needs to hear this. World-renowned heart surgeon. The long-established dietary recommendations have created an epidemic of obesity and diabetes, the consequences of which dwarf any historical plague in terms of mortality, human suffering, and dire economic consequences. This is a world-renowned heart surgeon knowing that our dietary recommendations, that our AMA, that our country has been recommending is completely wrong. In this article, he went on to say how if you did not go by the recommended dietary recommendations of low cholesterol, low fat, you could possibly have a malpractice suit. That's how strict we have been on telling everybody, do low fat, that's the most important, low cholesterol. And these dietary recommendations have been completely wrong and it's causing an epidemic where the consequences are going to be greater than any plague our world has ever seen. And hearing those statistics this week, I was just shocked. My mouth just dropped open. I couldn't believe that we are getting up close to 50% obesity in this country. It's just absolutely shocking and very, very sad. And that the AMA and our healthcare industry is not coming out and saying the cause of this obesity and stressing to everybody the cause of this obesity is shocking to me. We know the cause of the obesity. We used to wonder what the cause of lung cancer was, emphysema. It was cigarettes. Plain and simple, there was one answer, there was one cause, it was cigarette smoking. The cause of the obesity problem here in the United States is one cause, one thing only, the poison in your body that is going up, the perfect poison. It's raising, it's going up, it's increasing in most Americans, the perfect poison. It's a poison that pushes everything into your fat cells and doesn't let anything out of your fat cells. Perfect poison pushes everything into fat cells and doesn't let anything out of the fat cells. What is that poison? It's called insulin. Insulin is the poison that is going up in all of Americans, that is pushing everything into the fat cells, not letting the fat come out of the fat cells, and is literally making fat obese starve. Their body is starving because insulin is so powerful, it pushes everything into your fat cells, it doesn't let anything out of your fat cells, and you are ravenous. You are starving. You are hungry because all your nutrition is getting pushed into your fat cells. That is what's happened. That is the cause. And the AMA, physicians, everyone should be talking about this, that insulin is the poison. It is the hormone that is going up. And everyone should be talking about why insulin goes up. And why does insulin go up? Because sugar is being added to everything in our diet. We're eating more and more sugar. And also, because our government and our healthcare industry isn't talking about the other simple sugars, processed foods, potatoes, white rice, white bread, white bagels, pizza crust. So these are the foods that we are all eating, and nobody even knows that it's really bad for you. Everyone continues to think that fat is bad for you. It's not. It's sugar and the simple carbohydrates. That is what's raising insulin. That's what's causing the obesity problem. So white potatoes, white rice, white bagels, white bread. These are things that just in the United States, we just shouldn't be eating at all. It should be completely erased from your diet. I don't eat it, and it's just not that big a deal. And then the biggest contributor to the simple sugars that has happened since the 1980s, when you look at, okay, what are the kids eating? Why is there such a huge obesity problem in children? here in the United States, what is the biggest contributor to the increased calories and increased sugar in our diet? Is it potatoes? No. Is it white rice? No. Is it white flour? No. You look at all these simple carbohydrates that raise insulin that are terrible for you, but they're not the biggest contributor. It's not the biggest change that's happened since the 1980s. The biggest change that has happened since the 1980s when it comes to things we drink, things we eat that raise this hormone that's causing the obesity epidemic is sugar drinks. So if your children are heavy, they're struggling with their weight, you can't have sugar drinks in the house. When you go out to dinner, when you go out to lunch, whatever, you cannot order a sugar soda. That is the biggest contributor to this increase in sugar, which increases the fat storage hormone insulin. So problems with losing weight, problems with obesity, the biggest thing that we can do as a country is just stop drinking sugar drinks. I continue to hear from people that, oh yeah, well I drink sugar drinks, sugar soda because it's better than diet. That is absolutely not true. That's a conspiracy. It's so not true. It's got to be a conspiracy. There are a few studies that show that when you drink an artificially sweetened drink, you get increased cravings to sugar. Well, there's multiple studies that show that sugar drinks are completely addicting, possibly the most addicting substance on the planet. When you compare sugar drinks to drugs like cocaine, drugs like heroin, there's been multiple studies that show that sugar is actually more addicting than any other drug. There's been studies where they've had mice on heroin. They could get the mice off heroin. They couldn't get them off of sugar. Larsen, sorry about that. We lost our Wi-Fi connection, but again, we're just here at our Learn at Lunch, and just with the shocking news of the obesity rate is now 40%. Emotional thing for me, and so we're talking about obesity, and really the cause is the high carbohydrate, simple processed foods, and the sugar. And I was just talking about the biggest increase in sugar comes from, since the 1980s, has come from sugar drinks. And I continue to have clients that think that sugar drinks, sugar sodas are better than diet sodas. Neither of them are good, but without a doubt, sugar sodas are the worst. The diet sodas, the studies that have shown that they're bad is when they increase cravings, where sugar sodas actually are completely addicting. The artificial sweetener does change your intestinal bacteria, where you can make more of the sugars into fat. Well, when you're drinking sugar sodas, you bombard your liver with fructose. All of that gets turned into fat, and you get really high triglycerides in your body. So that's not an argument either. So increased cravings maybe with diet soda, changes in bacteria maybe, and then maybe the possibility of cancer. The studies on mice and rats where they actually increased the chance of bladder cancer, they were getting the equivalent of about 50 to 60 Diet Cokes a day or even more. It was huge, huge amounts. It was an amount that you would never ever drink. Diet sodas are not good for you, but I want to get the message out to everybody because this obesity rate keeps going up, just that sugar is it. It is the cause of the obesity epidemic. Sugar is causing the perfect poison called insulin to make your fat cells get bigger and bring on hunger. And our healthcare industry needs to get this out. I read about Dwight Lundell, the world-renowned cardiologist, who came out recently and said our dietary recommendations have been completely wrong. It really is about getting good fats in your diet: olive oil, avocados, nuts, flaxseed, fish, fats from fish. Getting these good fats in and getting rid of the junky, simple carbohydrates. You're not going to miss it. You're not going to miss sugar sodas. You're not going to miss white rice. You're not going to miss white potatoes. You're not going to miss white bread. Very, very simple, easy things we can all do to lower our insulin, lower that fat storage hormone, and we can stop the increase in obesity in this country, it is not going to stop until people grasp this idea that let's get good fats back in our diet. Let's get more fat back in our diet, but let's not go back to saturated fats, fatty meats, and fatty bacon. Why don't we do good fats that make you live longer? And the most important thing that everybody needs to know is we've got to get rid of the junky carbohydrates. And again, I'm just going to read this quote from Dr. Lundell. He says, the long-established dietary recommendations, that's low fat. That is what us as healthcare providers, our long-established dietary recommendations, that is low fat. Let me say it again. The dietary recommendations by physicians has been low fat, have created epidemic of obesity and diabetes, the consequences of which dwarf any historical plague in terms of mortality, human suffering, and dire economic consequences. So anyways, emotional topics for me, seeing women being treated with such awful synthetic oral hormones. I talked about that before. This the obesity epidemic is probably the most emotional topic for me. I just cannot believe that obesity keeps going up year after year, and that we are now up to 40% obesity here in our country when we know the cause of the obesity, and we seriously, very few physicians are talking about it. It is caused by simple sugars, and it's caused by low-fat diet. We know the cause, just like we know the cause of lung cancer and emphysema. And so I'm going to keep talking about this. But yeah, the shocking news this past week. Obesity rate now at 40%. So get the good fats in, stop the sugar. It's that simple. So anyways, thanks for joining me this week at SLC Med Spa or Learn at Lunch. And I'm going to be talking about in the near future the other really emotional thing for me with our diet and our healthcare system here, and that's low iodine. Also next week, we're going to be talking about just the amazing new procedures we can do by drawing your blood, spinning off the red blood cells and injecting plasma back into the scalp and into the face, and injecting fat cells, and just talk about just the great results we're getting with using your own body tissue as filler and as something to stimulate new healthy tissue growth. Thanks for joining us, and again, stop that sugar, get some good fats. Have a great day, everybody.